Hello everyone, today is our final live video for Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, and we are going to talk about our final thoughts and feelings on this fantastic read. Sorry. So far this year, this is my favorite book of the year. The cover is gorgeous. We Hunt the Flame had a cover that rivaled this one though, and so does a few others that are still coming out. But so far this year, this is my favorite cover, my favorite read of the year, just because it had such a interesting plot line and something that I have never heard of before. So let's jump right into it. First of all, my final rating for this book is, 4 out of 5 stars, just because a 5 out of 5 has to be completely fantastic, which this book is fantastic, but it did have a few minor flaws in it. Just because, number one, I'm not a huge fan of standalone novels, and this one is that, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I just think that there could be a lot more to this story than what she had just written here. So I'm hoping that maybe she changes her mind or does another story that may not be a continuance of this one, but in the same world, because I just feel like we did not get enough of Nathaniel and Elizabeth together, and Silas. What's his real name? Siltharius? I'm gonna stop embarrassing myself. Anyways, so, Silas is my favorite character in this entire book. I know he's a side character, but his changing personality and his character development is just really great in this book, and the way that Nathaniel and him have his relationship is one of the best ideas I've ever known, because Silas and Nathaniel is supposed to be a business relationship, but it turns out to be something more like family, which I'm going to jump around on the question card today, but which brings me to my favorite quote or passage, which is on page 436 in these last couple chapters, and that is the passage where they set him free by speaking his true name so that he could save them all from death, pretty much, and instead of killing them like he said he would, he spares their lives and makes sure that they live to see another day, which is hauntingly beautiful and just wrenched at my heart, and I thought it was just a great addition to the book to have him in it and to allow that character development to overcome some of his demonic tendencies, and I thought that was fantastic. And then overall, I thought the author did a really great job of establishing her fantasy world within the book. From start to finish, you really get a clear picture of what is going on and who's a part of it and what the fantasy world means in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes fantasy world focuses too much on the characters rather than the world around them, and I'd say a good example of that would be Shatter Me, because it's all about her perspective and her powers, where you don't get a lot of what's going on outside of her. But this book did a really good job of doing that, which I greatly appreciated. So overall, I think she did a great job of establishing her fantasy world within this book. We already went through quote and passage, and then for final say on how believable I found the narrator to be and whether or not I think we got the true story, I would say that the narrator is very believable in this book, just because she is relatable from start to finish and has a really great arc of character development throughout the book, always changing and always learning from her mistakes, and some books are not like that. So I really like that she was relatable in that she did make mistakes and had to learn from them and had to learn the hard way a lot of times in this book. So Elizabeth was a very relatable character, and I found her progression of development very believable. And I also thought that we did get the true story, and finally at the end, her and Nathaniel get together, and Silas and all of them suffer a great loss when he has to sacrifice his life for the good of humanity. So I thought all of that character development really did give us the true story. And then final thoughts on whether or not the story was plot-based or character-driven. I would say that this story did an excellent job of being both. So this is a very interesting plot that I have not heard of before. It's very new, and I'm very excited that I chose this book just because it is like no other fantasy book I've read in my entire life, and I am an avid reader of fantasy. So the plot of this book was very interesting and very well developed. However, the characters were too. So I would say that this book goes hand in hand together of creating an interesting plot while also developing the characters very well in order to weave almost the perfect story. And then finally, what made the setting unique or important? Could the story have taken place anywhere? I would say that the story could take place anywhere just because we don't get a lot of the feeling of exactly where this kingdom is. We know that it's the 5 great libraries, and at the center is the royal library, which is very interesting. However, we don't really get a sense of where the other Fae are or anything like that, whereas in books like A Court of Thorns and Roses, you really get a sense for the human world and then the Fae world around it, and all of the different provinces and all of the different courts. In this book, it's more of on their continent, what they're doing in that continent, and what cities they're in, and that's it. You don't get to really see what goes on outside of her Nathaniel's world, so I think the world building was a little lacking in that portion of the book, so that's another reason why I would give it 4 out of 5 stars, was the world building for me was a little lacking. The plot was good, the character development was good, but you didn't really understand what was going on outside of the characters' points of view, rather than how the villain affected everyone involved. So I would say that the setting is unique and important, but it could have taken place anywhere just because that world building aspect was a little bit lacking for me. So that is the conclusion of the Fantasy Monthly Book Club question card, and this is the conclusion of our monthly read-along for Sorcery of Thorns. I hope that you guys really enjoyed this book because I loved it so much. I'm so glad that I chose it, and I'm so glad that they had sent me a copy of it to read for myself, free of charge, and I'm so glad that you guys had decided to read it with me. So let me know your total rating down below, 1 to 5, and tell me why it got 5 or 1 or 4. Let me know your final thoughts on the book club question cards answers, and if you agree with me, just put a thumbs up with what I've been saying, and if not, tell me your varying opinions. Thank you guys so much for participating in this read-along and for watching these videos and interacting in this group. And I really hope that you guys are loving your Fantasy Monthly merch, and you guys have seen next month's, which is July. And we're reading Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim, who is a new upcoming author, and it is a Mulan retelling, and I did put up all of the artwork so you can see that, and I just got it in the mail the other day. It is perfection. It looks way better in person than it does online. You guys will not be disappointed for the July merch and the July book. So I cannot wait to do that with you guys, and you guys have a good rest of your Sunday.